ये क्या है? ऑटोमेटिक है क्या?
नहीं, इसको बंद नहीं करना पड़ेगा, चालू है अभी। ये वहां से सेट नहीं हुआ है।
Very good morning to everyone. So today I'll be doing the weekly analysis of this week's current affairs. Okay, so here is the first one on your screen. How Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna Gramin provides a roof over the head of rural women. Now, if you are aware of what PM Awas Yojna is all about, so the scheme is basically talking about what? Providing housing to all of those who are beneficiaries, and those beneficiaries will be decided by the reports from the census or from the ministries. Now, our finance minister Nirmala Sitaraman in the interim budget has made a proposal to build 2 crores of houses in rural India. Now, what is this scheme? Okay, so now if you see, the reports, what are the reports talking about? Firstly, the 2 crore houses that need to be built in rural India, the target is that this should be completed in next 5 years. So 2 crores and more houses, just a minute. Okay, so 2 crores and more houses that need to be built in just a minute. So 2 crore houses in next 5 years. That's what the target is. Now, this much of houses in next 5 years, and what is, why this scheme is actually brought in and why they are thinking about building so many houses in next 5 years and providing a roof over the head of rural women. That means why women are mostly considered. So they are saying that Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna Gramin is boosting Nari Shakti. Now, why they are especially focused on rural women? So they are saying that this would help in bringing, or this would help in addressing the Gender disparity. Why gender disparity? Because with the reports we have found that majority of the holdings of or the ownership of the house was either lying with the male section or with the joint ownership of both the male and the women or the spouse together. So what was the ownership status? Based on which they have been, talking about boosting Nari Shakti through Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna Gramin. So one status that they have read about is that women are jointly owning over 70% of houses. That means what? That the ownership is with the women, that means 70% of the women, and these women are either jointly or individually holding the ownership. Fine. So in case of women's having the ownership rights on the houses, the percentage is 70%. Fine. Now, other than this, what else? Now, 46% of the allotment, that means, 46% on the allotment of the houses has been found that it is under the ownership of men's. Fine. So this is the stats now based on which we have thought about what that this is going to be next game changer. Why? Because this will help in boosting or bringing women empowerment. Now, if we are going to bring more ownership of women's into the house, what purpose is it going to serve? That means how it is going to bring changes. So see what is going to happen now. Whatever I told you, based on that we have a National Family Health Survey. So let's see what National Family Health Survey is talking about. Okay, so according to National Family Health Survey, the fifth report of National Family Health Survey, and what is this data talking about? Now, there has been a significant gap. According to the National Family Health Survey 5, there has been a significant gap. Significant gap as in what? Significant gap regarding the ownership of the rights of the house. Why? Because according to this survey, they said that 42% of the women's had joint ownership, whereas 60% of the men's had single ownership. Fine. So there has been what a major gap in the ownership of the house. Fine. Now, other than that, see what is going to happen if there is a lot of joint ownership of the house. Both among the spouse. So firstly, this is going to bring a lot of sense of security with the women section, because women are treated as a weaker section, so this shall bring a lot of sense of security. Sense of security as in what? Because in case of any economic hardships, any kind of socio-economic hardship that they are going to witness, they'll able to deal with it. So any kind of socio-economic hardships can be dealt. Fine. Now, other than this, the property ownership, etc. Now, what are the guidelines of if they are trying to build in 2 crore houses or more in next 5 years? That means there must be certain kind of guidelines they have been thinking about. So let's talk about the guidelines, what they have been, what they have framed in. So what they said is that under this Pradhan Mantri Awas Yojna Gramin, what we can do is that allot the house. That means until and unless both the spouses are alive, bring the ownership to both of them. In case if the single beneficiary is women, then the single ownership right is going to the women. Otherwise, the house will be having what? A joint ownership between the husband and the wife. Now, the next thing what they said was that the state have the option. Now, what is that option? The state have the option to allocate the house solely in women's name, providing avenue for further empowerment. That means this can happen. That means the Awas Yojna or the ownership of the house to the rural women can happen. That means single ownership is possible, and when single ownership is possible, this shall lead to more of empowerment. Fine. Okay. Okay, fine. So let's move on to the next consideration what they have heard about under the guidelines of PM Awas Yojana. Okay, so next thing that they are talking about, that what you can do is that when you are providing this single ownership rights to the women, what you can find is that firstly make a social category allocation. Now, what is that social category allocation? First, you need to decide that the allotted house is going to which which structure of the society. For example, if how many members are coming from your scheduled caste, how many members are coming from scheduled tribe communities. Now, based on that, you can again check the allocation. That means, see, 60% of the allocated house have gone to the members of scheduled caste and scheduled tribe. Now, based on that, 60% of the allocated house, 60% allocation has been to 60% has been to SC and ST. 25% have been allocated to other communities. This is what the stats have been telling us. And 15% of the allocations have been received through who? By the members of the minority groups. So 15% allocation going to the members of to other communities. So this is what the stats are telling us. Fine. Okay, now let's move on to the next analysis. The next analysis says that equity concerns in banning fossil fuel extraction. Now, for past so many months, we have been doing analysis regarding what should be done in order to conserve the environment, to check the use of fossil fuels, how to bring in renewable energy resources, how even when I was doing the daily editorial analysis, I was telling you about the loss and damage fund also. So let's see what this article is talking about. So the article is talking about what? That means there has been a need of what? Phasing out fossil fuels, and phasing out fossil fuel beginning with what? Emergence of UNFCCC, that is your United Nations Framework of Convention on Climate Change. Now, what are they talking about? So, see, they have said that there are countries which are economically very diversified. So, economically diversified countries like Canada, US, UK. So, what is happening that since they have a very high per capita income, so they can go for what? They can go for this non-fossil fuel extraction. But what about countries who are middle income countries? So non-fossil fuel, just a second. Okay, non-fossil fuel extraction by developed or economically diversified countries like US, UK, Canada is possible. Why? Because Because they are very high per capita income countries. Fine. Okay. Now the next thing, what it is that in you just now I have told you that these are high per capita income countries. They are economically very powerful. But what about countries like Congo? What about all those countries which are not that influential as compared to these countries? Now, how are they going to work towards it? So what is found is that in countries like Congo, in countries like Iraq, you'll find that these are heavily dependent on fossil fuels. Now, when these countries are heavily dependent on fossil fuels, they face very limited transition. And limited transition regarding what? Because they have less capacity. And less capacity to phase out these fossil fuels, because see, it's very much in common sense. Why? Because you have less capacity to bring in non, or to have a transition from fossil fuels to non-fossil fuels. Actually, it's all about the capacity, because all those countries which are having high per capita income, they actually can invest it in non-fossil fuels, extraction. But what about those countries who are middle income countries, or they are least developed countries? So the chances for those countries becomes very difficult. Fine. Now, if I talk about the scenario of India, where is India, lying at present? How will India witness, this transition? So we have, just now I told you that we have made what considerable efforts towards bringing renewable energy sources, and this is exactly what is happening in the cases of or in the scenario of India. Though we have made efforts towards renewable energy, just a minute. Okay. Though we have made efforts towards renewable energy, fossil fuel still dominates the market. Fossil fuel still dominate the market. Now, when in India, the fossil fuels are still dominating the market, what is happening in the case of non-fossil fuel extraction? So they say that India need a lot of economic support, which ultimately everyone knows that. Other than economic support, we also have a very serious concern of unemployment. So we are dealing with unemployment issues. We are dealing with livelihood crisis also. And we are having too much of population also, because 1.4 billion population is what India is witnessing right now. Now, other than that, this transition from fossil fuel to non-fossil fuel require what? Humongous economic support. Other than this, now when we require economic support, now India was also successful at COP26 meet. Why do I say that India was successful at COP26 meet? Now India was successful at COP26 meet. Why? Because we talked about what? Phasing down of unabated coal. Phasing down of unabated coal. Unabated coal. That means instead of phasing out, we talked about phasing down. Now, because that becomes very difficult. Why? Because phasing out is far of extreme option, and phasing out means that you are going to totally get off of this. So phasing out becomes difficult, phasing down becomes pretty much easy. So we were successful over here. Fine. Now, other than this was Indian case. Uh, this is how I think we need to really think about banning fossil fuel extraction, because banning is not one-stop solution, because this can be afforded by the developed countries, but not with the least developed countries or underdeveloped countries. So this is not one-stop solution. This is what the author is talking about here. Fine. Okay, now let's move on to the next editorial. Banks must gear up for investment-led growth. Now, banks must gear up for investment-led growth. Changes in the Banking Regulation Act may be needed to allow banks to mobilize deposits for over 10 years. So the interim budget shows the counters of the upcoming final budget in July. However, this is based on three important assumptions, that is, continuation of the government at the center and the spectrum of our present finance minister, what she's talking about. So other than this, the geopolitical tensions that are de-escalating in the global arena. Now, if you see the article is more about lowering the market borrowings in 2024, and it is expected to generate what? Substantial private investment. So the article is majorly talking about lowering the borrowings from the market So lowering the borrowings from the market, and also the article is talking about that there need to what? There is a high need to generate the substantial investment from the private sector. And what is the need? Because there will be demand for, because there is demand for credit. And where is this credit coming from? If there is investment from the private sector. So lowering the borrowing from the market and if this is going to happen, if the borrowing from the market is going to lessen by the government, then ultimately there will be a lot of substantial credits that will be present for the private sector in the market. So there will be substantial credits which will be present for the private sector. So substantial credits will be present for the private sector, or which will ultimately demand the credit from the market. Okay. So first thing is the scenario is this. Now the point is that if we are going for or if the bank must gear up for investment-led growth, that means what are we ultimately targeting? Okay, we shall discuss this. Just a minute. Okay. Fine. Now see, what is happening now? What altogether is going to happen? So see, increased demand in credit would require, if there is a lot of demand of credit happening in the market, demand of credit is increasing. So what is going to happen now? अगर demand of credit increase हो रहा है, so what is the reason behind it? How can this be fulfilled? So this is what we need to think about. So demand of credit would require what? What is the what is the requirement in case demand of credit is getting higher? So first is that there should be large banks. Now large banks, why are large banks required? Now these banks will ultimately help in what? Financing the major projects, because you require finance from the market, and finance from the market can only be met through these large banks. So demand of credit could be met by the large banks because they are at a potential for what? To meet the demands of the massive projects. So massive project financing will happen through these large banks. Fine. Now, other than this, if you are having large banks, other options, what are there? So other option is that what you can do is you can bring in what? More of financial inclusion programs. Now, financial inclusion programs will help in generating the or building the habits of savings. Now, this habit of savings can, is we have actually in past witnessed that all those women who were included more in financial inclusion, they probably contributed more towards investments and savings. So, other option that we have is of financial inclusion. And this financial inclusion is more targeting towards women segment. Why? Because this shall increase what? Women's deposits or women depositor more into the system, and more of women depositors, what is going to happen? Ultimately, we'll have corresponding number of investors. Now, with this or with this much of investment, we can ultimately target towards what? This could be led to what? Checking the demand of credit. Fine. Okay. Now, this is why we require what? Banks to invest over, or we require banks to gear up their investment. Fine. Okay. Now, let's move on to the next. Article. It says that policy must address your growth gap. Now, what is this? Policy must address growth gap. Now, see, Indian economy right now is witnessing a lot of changes. I have just told you in my initial discussion that we have what? Huge unemployment. Now, when we are saying that we are having huge unemployment, that means we are having youth which are or who is ready to work, but ultimately job creation is less. So one such challenge of Indian economy is you are having what? There is huge unemployment. Other than that, our present government has always been focusing about what? India should be in a stage where we are job creator. Now, when we are talking about job creation, that means we have suddenly found that people have, risen towards self-employment. So, more of self-employment. Now, self-employment market is revolving around self-employment. Other than this, they have said that this self-employment comprises of various sectors. Now, people are there in agriculture sector, people are there in petty jobs, and this could be street vendors, anything. Suddenly, we have found increase in increase in those people who have contributed towards the segment which is of business sector, or you can say small startups. So we have boom in startup segment. Other than this, we have also found what? That the labor wage in the departments have been stagnant. So stagnant labor wages, that is also one of the issues which Indian economy is facing. So labor wages have been stagnant. Other than this, what is happening? Now, there has been government debt. Now, government debt as in regarding what? Because government has found, or the budget has, or the, just now we have got this budget. So budget is showing what? That the government wants to reduce its debt to GDP ratio. So government has reduced its, or government is targeting to reduce its debt to GDP ratio. And if government is targeting in reducing the debt to GDP ratio, that means what? Somewhere or other we are having this ratio very, we are having this very, what should I say? Very, the ratio is bad. So what is that? Now this stands at what? Now this ratio is close to 58% of GDP. Fine. Now the point is that after all this, what is required? How are we going to address these challenges? Because the authors are saying that we require the policy. The policy must address what? The growth gap. Because somewhere or other they are pushing, or you can say they are pulling the economy now. So how we are ultimately going to boost the economy by building in or bringing more growth? Fine. Okay. Now, firstly, what we need to do is we need to focus on reviving the Indian economy. So we need to focus on reviving the Indian economy. So revival of economy becomes important. That means we need to focus on reviving the economy. Now, how is this going to happen, or how is this reviving of economy going to happen? So we need to build in investment. We need to focus on investment. Okay. Now, when we are focusing on investment, this is happening how? We need to bring in private sector investment. Now, bringing in private sector investment. Other than that, what we need to focus on? We need to shift towards, investment-driven economy. That means we need to shift from consumption to investment-driven economy. Consumption to investment driven economy. Now that means what? There should be more and more investment in the market, and instead of focusing on consumption, we need to bring more of investment. Now investment driven economy. Other than that, what we need to focus on, we have a certain loopholes in our infrastructure, though the government is trying enough to build in the infrastructure. So we need to focus, again, we need to plug in the gaps which are there in the infrastructure. So we need to focus on infrastructure building, because that will increase what? Investment from the private sector. Fine. So this was your infrastructure building. Again, we need to, reduce the cost on logistics, because this is also, hampering our growth. So we need to check the logistics. Fine. So this is what how the policy framing should take place, because ultimately the growth gap should be filled and it should be lessened. So these are certain ways in which we can help towards reviving the economy. Okay, let's move on to the next analysis. Okay, so the next analysis says Uttar Pradesh model to tackle malnutrition. Now, Uttar Pradesh model to tackle malnutrition, what is that talking about? Uttar Pradesh model to tackle malnutrition. Now, first you should know what is malnutrition. So, as you see, the article is talking about Uttar Pradesh is a remarkable example of the importance of women's empowerment in tackling malnutrition by supporting community-based micro enterprises led by SHGs, that are your self-help groups. Now, these enterprises produce nutritious foods for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers and children, provided as take-home ration through the Integrated Child Development Service Program. Now, they are talking about what? Take-home ration. And this is happening through ICDS, and this is your Integrated Child Development Service. Now, what has Uttar Pradesh government done? So, see, Uttar Pradesh is a remarkable example. Why? Because they have made what? They have thought about women empowerment as one of the steps treating the or to check malnutrition, and this is why this model is appreciated very much. Now, what is malnutrition all about? What is how do you know that someone is or a person or a child is under malnutrition? So for that according to the WHO, that is the World Health Organization, they have been saying what? That it refers to the deficiencies or excess. For that matter, deficiency is there. In case if it is excess also, then also it will be said that a child is suffering from malnutrition. So what are certain key terms related over here? That in case, according to WHO, World Health Organization, in case if there is deficiency or if there is excess or if there is imbalance in a person's intake of energy or nutrients, then it is said what? That the person is suffering from what? Malnutrition. Fine. Now, if I said that or when I said that it is either deficiency or it is excess or it is imbalance, that means deficiency we can understand what? That it is a case of undernutrition. But what about excess? So in case of excess, it is again the case of obesity, or you can say the case of overweight. Now, when it is the case of overweight or it is the case of obesity, then also we say that the person or the child is suffering from malnutrition. So please write this, that according to WHO, it refers to deficiency excess or imbalance in a person's intake of energy or nutrients. Now, the malnutrition itself covers two groups. The malnutrition covered two broad groups. One is undernutrition. Which includes stunting, wasting, wasting, underweight, stunting, wasting, underweight, and micronutrient deficiency. Or insufficiencies. The other is overweight, obesity, and diet related non-communicable diseases. Malnutrition is caused by micronutrient deficiency. Malnutrition is caused by micronutrient deficiency. Which has intergenerational impacts. Anemic mothers are known to give birth to anemic babies. Fine. So this is the definition of malnutrition. Okay. Now we need to know what is the extent of malnutrition in India. Fine. So based on that, we can, make policies. We can actually think about checking malnutrition. So first is, what is the condition of India when we say, we are facing malnutrition or we are facing the issues of malnutrition. So according to UNICEF, what they have said is that India was at 10th spot among the countries. That means according to UNICEF data, India was ranking in 10th among countries with high numbers of underweight children. Fine. And 17th was the spot. That means the highest number of stunted children. That means we had 10th spot in 10th spot in case of, or 10th rank in case of underweight children, and 17th in case of stunted children. Fine. So this was the data that was coming from UNICEF. Next is according to what the National Family Health Survey is saying, because this is the data that was from UNICEF. Now the data I'm talking about again is coming from National Family Health Survey. So NFHS, and the NFHS survey, the fifth report that came, it said what, that we have close to 35% of stunted children. That means our reports are showing what, 35% of stunted children, and this stunted children are under 5 years. Then we have close to 20% of wasting, and we have close to 32% of underweight, and we have 3% of overweight. Fine. So this was the data that was coming from National Family Health Survey. Now we have heard about what malnutrition is. We have heard about what the international agencies are talking about malnutrition, what as a country we are facing. Then we have talked about the data that is coming from UNICEF. We have talked about the data that is coming from National Family Health Survey. Now the point is that apart from the data that we have got, what are the measures that should be taken? So what are the measures that need to be taken so as to meet these crises, so as to meet these challenges? So what has the government done? So let's talk about the government initiatives to tackle malnutrition. So first strategy of government is ICDS. And what is that? That is Integrated Child Development Services Scheme. So what is this scheme talking about? So first is ICDS, that is Integrated Child Development Services. To improve nutritional and health status of to improve the nutritional and health status of children in age group of 0 to 6 years. That means this service is integrated child development service is talking about what? Improving the nutritional health status of children, and this is aging 0 to 6 years. Fine. Other than ICDS, there is one scheme that is Poshan Abhiyan. Poshan Abhiyan. Now, what is Poshan Abhiyan? It is Prime Minister's overarching scheme, that is Pradhan Mantri's or Prime Minister's overarching scheme, an overarching scheme for holistic nutrition abhiyan. Okay, so this is talking about what? This scheme, that is Prime Minister's overarching scheme of holistic and nutritional, nutrition abhiyan. So this is talking about what? That this scheme says that bring in or build in the health nutritional facilities. So first is strengthening the nutritional content. Strengthening the nutritional content, focusing on delivery practices, focusing on delivery practices. Delivery practices means developing the practices of what? Building of health, building of wellness, building of nutrition. So I have discussed with you, just a minute. I'm finding issue with deleting this. Hold on for a second. Okay, so I talked about what ICDS scheme. This is how we can check malnutrition. Then we talked about portion. Now, what else? Next, I'm going to talk about the midday meal scheme. Let's talk about midday meal scheme. So what is midday meal scheme talking about? Now, midday meal scheme provides every child which is aged between 6 to 14 years. So midday meal scheme is all about the children's age from 6 to 14 years and who are attending the classes of or classes from 1 to 8. All these children are targeted over here in midday meal scheme, and these children will get what? They shall be served hot meal every day. Except on holidays. Fine. So one is your ICDS, one is your Poshan Abhiyan, other is your midday meal scheme. Next, see, there are many schemes which could be written over here. I'm just discussing few of them with you. So another one is your National Food Security Act. That is also doing wonders. So National Food Security Act, NFSA, National Food Security Act. Now, what is this National Food Security Act talking about? So National Food Security Act aims to provide what? Subsidized food grains. Subsidized food grains to a majority of population, ensuring children and the adults access to adequate food. Okay, so NFSA, that is National Food Security Act, is talking about subsidized food grain to the majority of the population and children. This includes your children also. So that the entire population should have access to adequate food. Fine. Now this was NFSA. Now the point is that we know the definition of malnutrition. We know the schemes. We know that the government is trying enough to get rid of malnutrition. We have focused on multiple aspects and parameters based on the schemes. For example, your integrated child development service and the Poshan Abhiyan, then the midday meal scheme, then the National Food Security Act, etc. Now the point is, even though we are having so many things on the papers, but ultimately the results are not something which are satisfactory. So next is, even though initiatives are there, what are the challenges we are facing? That means apart from all this all this development, we have certain challenges in our way. So what are those challenges? So let's deal with the challenges. Let's study about the challenges in tackling the malnutrition in India. So what is the first issue we are going to see? Because we are having the schemes. So since we talked about ICDS, now we'll talk about what is the challenge with ICDS. So next, you can write about that. What is the issue with ICDS? That means what is the issue with Integrated Child Development Service? Issue with ICDS. So first is lack of good quality of food supply. Now I told you that this service or this ICDS scheme is talking about providing you what? Nutritional and health status, or it is talking about improving the nutritional and health status of children of age group of 0 to 6 years. Now, in order to improve the health status, in order to improve the nutrition or build in the nutritional status, what we need to think is that we need to provide good quality food grade. Now that becomes one of the issues. So first issue is not providing adequate quality of food grade. So first issue is not providing adequate quality of food grade. Then uniform distribution of food is affected. That means the distribution of the food is affected in the chain. Next is the Anganwadi workers. Anganwadi workers' effectiveness in addressing malnutrition. Anganwadi workers' effectiveness in addressing malnutrition is hindered by low wages, and inadequate training. That means the Anganwadi workers, and for that matter all those SHGs and people who are associated with the schemes, or for the upliftment of the children who are dealing with the issues of malnutrition, they are not adequately trained. So the training is also a issue behind it. So first is lack of quality food supply. Uniform distribution of food supply is affected. Next is Anganwadi workers' effectiveness in addressing malnutrition. Why? Because they are having low wages. So low wages and inadequate training. Fine. Now we always, we often face a issue. What is the issue? The issue with the data. For example, if we have a correct data, which is you can say a relevant data, a data which is very close. I won't say that accuracy is something which I'm targeting, but fine, probability towards accuracy should be more. So if that's the scenario, what happens is that at least you can frame policies in a manner having known that what is the population you are targeting, what are the people who are witnessing this issue. So in that way, what is happening is we are somewhere other facing the issue of data also, because the data is not that appropriate, or the accuracy of the data is missing. So please have this there, that there is a high issue with the credibility of the data. High issue with the credibility of data. Since the surveys are conducted in gaps of time. Fine. Now, other than this, what is the issue? Now, if you see, majorly India is always focusing on what? Wheat and rice. So somewhere other, the policy which is very closely associated towards rice and wheat, we are we are in the process of providing food security with respect to what? Rice and wheat. This has led to a very limited way of checking the issue. That means we are not broadening our perspectives, we are not opening our ways. We have rather got stuck into the rice and wheat-based policy. So next is India's food security. India's food security gives excessive focus to rice and wheat for many decades. Next is climate change impact. That means, some regions are highly rain-fed, then some regions are witnessing dry areas. Now, for past so many years, we have also witnessed what there is a high fluctuation in monsoon cycles also. So that also becomes the issue. Right, that there has been frequent events which have impacted the agricultural activities, creating unfavorable conditions for food production. Fine. Now, these are, so see, we know malnutrition. We got certain policies and schemes to check malnutrition. Those were these. Now, instead of having all these schemes and policies, again, we face the issue of malnutrition and we are not able to check it more effectively. So what were the issues pertaining to those? And I told you that, our food security is getting more focused towards rice and wheat. Then we are facing erratic conditions regarding rainfall pattern, monsoon cycle. So our agriculture is getting affected. Then we have what our credibility of data is hampered. Then we have issues with integrated child development services. Fine. So all this is, after effects, when instead of, we got these schemes, then also we are facing these issues. So these are after issues. Now, the point is that what could be done? We have seen the problem, we know the problem, but if we are not we are not solving those issues, then there is no point bringing these schemes, and every year we are discussing the budget and all. So the point is that what could be done. So firstly, I told you that Anganwadi workers, they are facing the issue of low wages, and then training becomes also one of the major issues. So what we can do is that we can work towards, or we can focus towards, um, building these Anganwadi workers. That means wages could be increased, better training could be provided. Other than that, I feel since we have been inclined more towards rice and wheat for food security, then we can actually broaden the aspects of our food security. That means not getting focused towards rice and wheat especially. We can bring in other dietary components as well. Fine. Other than that, we have midday meal scheme, we have Poshan Abhiyan. So we need to focus on the audits as well. That means audits become important for us. So again, audits need to be checked, and they should be done diligently. Other than that, yes, breastfeeding. So promoting breastfeeding is also going to help in enhancing the nutritional well-being of infants and young children. Fine. So in this scheme of checking the malnutrition, and where UP government has been applauded, Uttar Pradesh model to check or tackle malnutrition. Here I made you read that there was take home ration. take home ration. That means what is take home ration all about? So let's talk about take home ration model of UP, that is Uttar Pradesh. So first is collaboration between UN World Food Program, UN World Food Program, Department of Women and Child Development, aims to boost the nutritional value, and utilization of supplementary nutrition in UP's, that means Uttar Pradesh ICDS scheme, that is Integrated Child Development Services scheme, which focuses on enriching what? Home ration products, taking home ration products. So which focuses on enriching take home ration products to promote diversity and increase consumption. Fine. Other than that, I have again told you that they have been talking about what importance of women empowerment. Why? Because women empowerment is proving to be a very beneficial step towards tackling malnutrition by supporting community-based micro enterprises led by SHGs. So next is that the take home ration model talks about women empowerment in tackling malnutrition, tackling malnutrition by supporting community-based micro enterprises led by self-help groups. These enterprises produce fortified and nutritious food for pregnant. These enterprises produce fortified and nutritious foods for pregnant and breastfeeding mothers and children. Fine. So why this is the reason why this model is very appreciated. Again, you can use this in your case studies, which will be good for you. Okay, now let's move on to the next article. Okay, so the next article talks about severe erosion of fiscal federalism. Now, what is the issue behind? So, on February 8th, Kerala CM will lead to protest in New Delhi against the center for what? For placing Kerala on a financial embargo. So, Kerala is going to protest, and for what? Because the allegations are coming from Kerala that the center government has placed Kerala on financial embargo. And what is this all about? Now see, government of Kerala has contended what? That center has, imposed NBC. What is NBC? That is net borrowing ceiling. Okay. So Kerala government has done what? Kerala government has contended that the center has imposed a net borrowing ceiling. Now, what is this net borrowing ceiling all about? So the state government has done what? Now the state government is opposing this NBC. So the state government is opposing this NBC, that is net borrowing ceiling. And why is state government opposing this net borrowing ceiling? Net borrowing ceiling because Kerala government is saying what? Kerala government is saying that center's imposition of this net borrowing ceiling is actually violating the article. And which article the Kerala government is talking about? So the Kerala government is saying that this imposition of net borrowing ceiling is violating the article which is 293 of the Constitution. Okay, now the point is that you should know what net borrowing ceiling is. Now central government has done this this net borrowing ceiling. And what is this net borrowing ceiling is talking about? This is actually ceiling, or you can say it is capping the borrowing of the states. That means now the state cannot borrow a amount which the center government has kind of notified at the beginning of the every fiscal year, you can say. So you can write that NBC is a cap on the borrowing of the states, notified by the central government, at the beginning of each fiscal year. So it is capping the borrowing when at the beginning of each fiscal year. That means you can't borrow beyond this limit. So Kerala government has gone to Supreme Court saying that the central government is violating the Article 293 of the Constitution. So what is this? Now what is this? So you can write that Article 293.3. So Article 293.3. Now what is this talking about? So Article 293.3 of the Constitution says that the state The state has to obtain the consent of the center, to raise any loan, to raise any loan if any part of the previous loan. That means if you are going to raise the loan, and in case if any part of your previous loan which is extended by the center is outstanding, so you can write that to raise any loan if any part of the previous loan extended by the center is outstanding. So the imposition of NBC, that is net borrowing ceiling, the imposition of NBC, that is net borrowing ceiling, is done by invoking the powers of the center, by invoking the power of the center under Article 293(3) of the Constitution. Fine. Now the point is that when Kerala government gone to Supreme Court, when the Kerala government is going for protest, so what is the argument that is coming from the state government? So you can write that according to Article 202 of the Constitution, what is happening is budget management is the responsibility of the state government and not the center. So according to the Article 202, so this is what state government, or you can say the Kerala government, is saying that under Article 202 it is the responsibility of the state government, not the center, of what? Of budget management. Fine. So this is what the state is. There is much more detailing need to be done, but this is what the news analysis. This is what this article has been talking about. That means that the Kerala government is opposing the central government regarding the net borrowing ceiling, and it is saying that central government is facing a financial embargo, and what is the reason behind it. So they are saying that facing this financial embargo from the center, and they are putting a limit on net borrowing ceiling. And the Article 293 of the Constitution is talking about what how the center can actually place restriction on it. Okay. So other than this, you can write one more thing, that state argues that funds in public accounts should be excluded from NBC. So state argues that funds in public accounts should be excluded from NBC, that is your net borrowing ceiling, as per Article 266(2), as per Article 266(2), which falls under state legislature jurisdiction and not the center. Fine. So this much for today. I hope so. Everything was absolutely clear. I shall see you in the next week analysis. Okay, fine. Thank you so much.